have no idea. Nobody told us anything, so we're standing there, we don't know what's going on. So it's just like, she's literally running behind you guys. That's, yeah, and we don't know why she's running. So.
Nice! Nice aim! I love that! Whoa!
Maxine Dexter, Oregon 3rd, checking in after what I would say is an indefensible ruling by the Ninth Circuit that opens the door to National Guard troops being deployed in our peaceful city. Let's just be clear. Portland is not lawless. We have been extraordinary in our resistance to Donald Trump's fairy tale about our city. We have remained peaceful.
Are you serious?
All right, well, let's check in on Portland and the supposedly mostly peaceful protests, because it appears that the situation is continuing to escalate. The terroristic tactics of Antifa are becoming more and more brazen, and I think it goes without saying that yesterday's appeals court ruling that is once again now allowing President Trump to send National Guard into the city could not come at a better time, and we will tell you why. Just on Saturday, of course, we talked about the supposedly peaceful No Kings Day and how those very No Kings protesters went to this facility and caused a bunch of chaos, riots, and violence. But they are not going away. Just last night, this was once again the scene. But of course, when I use the word insurrection, I have never been lying. We have for you yet more evidence that Portland police is actively shielding and providing cover for the Antifa domestic terrorists. And I do not exactly say that as a figurative means, right? We're not talking about some backdoor policy. No, I mean, you will literally see on camera as the Portland police last night provide physical shield and cover to the Antifa members, which actually results in a standoff with the federal government that is pretty interesting, and we got to show you and talk about, as well as the increasing tactics here, right? Apparently, they're now even renting out local facilities that will serve as terroristic staging grounds right outside of that ICE facility. This situation goes on. And again, the local government here, not just complicit, actively sponsoring and endorsing all of the violence against the federal government. There is no word for that other than insurrection. That is exactly what it is. But we'll give you some updates on the situation in today's video. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work and ensure that we can keep doing these videos. And that said, all right, let's check in on Portland, where supposedly, according to CNN and the national media and Jimmy Kimmel and all these characters, nothing is happening. It's a peaceful protest every single night. All right, well, you saw No Kings Day. This was last night, Monday night. Check it out. Look at this peaceful protest. Doesn't that just look so peaceful? Aren't you so convinced watching the scene that there's no need for National Guard? Trump is needlessly escalating the situation, guys. Yeah. How dare he call it war-ravaged Portland? It's not a war zone out there. Yeah. Sure, it's not. And I don't think this should be surprising to anyone. Again, this is kind of a nightly occurrence, but undeniably, right, the situation is not dying down. They're not, like, leaving. They're actually just multiplying. National Guard, get yourself here as fast as you can, okay? But that said, here is a really interesting video from last night that we need to show you, because there's several different things going on here. First and foremost, you see these Antifa members shining very bright spotlights directly into the eyes of the DHS agents that are stationed on that rooftop to secure the facility. Now, obviously, why are they doing that? Why are they trying to blind these people? So that the federal agents cannot actually see what is going on. Now, who knows what they're going to do, but given the fact we've seen repeated cases of violence against these very agents, it should be, frankly, common sense that, hey, that could very much be a pretext to target them, and then they can't see what you're doing, obviously, on the ground. But the story does not stop there, because you will notice as the Portland police, like, as I said, literally are forming a shield for these people, which creates a standoff as the federal agents actually come downstairs and say, what the heck is wrong with you, Portland police? And yes, this is the clash, right? This is the moment where they're basically saying, stop the insurrection. What is going on? But check it out for yourself.
Nice aim. that. Whoa. Get the middle. Woo.
Right, so that guy, that red circle you just saw, right, this guy is apparently the one shining the spotlight in the agents' faces.
What
did that person do?
is shining something in the... They're hiding behind the sign. And they're running for cover behind Portland police. Oh my God. You've got to be kidding me.
Right, again, I say there's no other word for this than insurrection. So you can see those guys. They're not just shining the spotlight. They're hiding behind the street sign, right, trying to take cover. Certainly they're up to no good. Federal agents have plenty of reason to believe you could be using that spotlight to, pull out a weapon or something like that. And then, yeah, you can't make that up. Literally physically run for cover behind the Portland police. Why? Because they know the Portland police are on the side of the violent terrorists. That's why I say you don't just need National Guard. At a certain point, you're going to have to say this is an insurrection and declare the Insurrection Act against the city, because how long are you going to allow a local government, right? Not just random people in the streets, the local government to be on the side of these people and actively protect them, right? What are we supposed to believe other than that the Portland PD and the local city government who represents them are ultimately encouraging all of this violence to happen? But see, check it out. Literally still shining the spotlight, hiding behind the Portland police who do nothing about it.
It's kind of wild. Shoot everybody else to shoot one person.
The bullets you got, come on!
Shining the right when you get mad at somebody else.
We should be allowed to.
And by the way, I would like to point out, right, why are they doing that? Because they're fully familiar, because before the DHS were trying to shoot pepper balls and tear gas out there, but they basically know, well, the Portland police, what are they going to do? Shoot the tear gas at the Portland police? I mean, that's an issue, obviously. But now, take a look here as DHS confronts the Portland police for covering for Antifa. Look at these patriots out here. All right, check it out.
We should be allowed to hear what
Nobody told us anything, so we're standing there, we don't know what's going on.
Oh my God,
So it's just like she's literally running behind you guys. That's and we don't know why she's running. So
Nice. Nice aim. I love that. Whoa. Get the middle. Woo. That AR is really nice. That AR is really nice.
What did that person
well, they were trying to shoot a guy that was running away.
that was like,
And yes, as we've seen time and time again, the Portland police simply let those suspects walk away. But I want you to keep in mind, right, in regards especially to that National Guard case yesterday, what is the argument of the Portland and Oregon government? They say, they try to sue against Trump using the National Guard because they said the Portland police have the situation completely under control. Trump is manufacturing this crisis. We are a city of law and order. We're not a city of anarcho-tyranny and violent leftist chaos. And yet you see the scene physically with your eyes time and time again that, by the way, national mainstream media has no interest in covering. They'll just scream in the White House press briefing room that Portland is peaceful, but they've never been there, when in reality, this is the actual situation on the ground. That said, the journalist who captured this video, Nick Sortor, who we've talked about extensively, been on the ground a lot, tells his own recounting of this yesterday on Fox News. So I want you to take a listen to that as well, so that way we can have the full confirmation and verification of everything I was describing. So take a listen.
Utter lawlessness. I mean, they sent out Portland police and Oregon state troopers out here that were given commands from the top to retreat every single time that things got dicey. And the people of Oregon, keep in mind, this is an American city. These people deserve better. They are victims of the government's total refusal to keep them safe, enforce noise ordinances. I mean, you hear these horns honking all day. This building right behind me is an apartment complex that houses veterans and young parents, and none of them are able to get the noise ordinances enforced. They are victims of the system. And, you know, they're excited to have President Trump come to their rescue. They're excited to have the National Guard out here restoring order that the city and state refused to do.
By the way, who are the guys behind you over your left shoulder? I mean, maybe you can go over and break bread with them.
Yeah, well, if I try that, they'll hit me with that megaphone like they did last time. So, I mean, there's no point. You can't talk to these people, Sean. You got a mixture of mentally ill people and people that have been radicalized by these leftist talking points, from people like, you look at like Hakeem Jeffries and Jasmine Crockett and all these people that go on TV constantly calling people like me and you Nazis and fascists, and, they want us dead. These are violent individuals, and they know, Sean, that they won't be prosecuted for harming people like me on the street. It's sick. It shouldn't be like this.
Well, yes, we know very well that the Democrat Party directly sponsors and orders all of this, because who's in charge of the local government? Who's in the national media praising the local government and telling people that they're running it perfectly fine? The Democrat Party. And yes, indeed, what orders are the Portland police being given? Anytime it gets dicey, anytime it gets violent, which actually your job as a police officer, as law enforcement, is to step in and resolve the situation, right? Conflict resolution, civil order, many other different duties you have. They actively abdicate those things. And again, why is that? Well, there's only one of two answers. First and foremost, they directly support what is going on, which I think is the real honest truth. But even secondly, I think a picture you've also seen repeatedly in Portland is that in some cases they're actually scared of the Antifa, right? If they step in and make it look like they're actually doing something, or they actually enforce law and order, and it's not just this secret agreement between the city and the Antifa, we're going to mostly let you do whatever you want. In the rare case where we have to arrest someone, you're going to be immediately let out on no cash bail and not even charged and all this stuff, right? But if they don't play along, they're actually terrified, much like the previous mayor of Portland, you might remember, actually was back in 2020, that the Antifa are going to come after them or give them a hard time, right? So it's like either, again, you support the violent extremists, communists in the streets, or you're so scared of them that you're letting them run the city, which either way is a pretty strong pretext to say, oh, so you're saying you need the help of the federal government? So you're saying the federal government needs to come in and deal with this situation? Because you have an active insurrection on your streets in that case. And either, again, you're supporting it, which is why you're letting them be the government, or you're so powerless that they are the real government. Either way, that is not something that ought to be tolerated on the soil of the United States of America, right? Is Portland part of this country, or are they not? Because if they are, and if the answer is yes, then the laws of the United States need to be enforced. And we're not the authoritarians or the bad guys for doing this. It's just so funny. The entire history of the modern West for the past century or so is basically like left-wing extremists, and especially in America, by the way, left-wing extremists come in, they cause a bunch of violence, they basically start running the show and terrifying everybody. The current existing government either hands over power to them or does nothing about it, and then the right wing, people try to come in and like resolve the situation and bring order, and then the right-wingers are called the bad guys, right? When in reality, like, we never create this problem to begin with. It's always them, it's always the anti-civilizational, destroyer nature of people that are just coming here causing all these problems, and then when we say, oh, we need order, you're an authoritarian, you're a fascist. Yeah, not the case, okay? By the way, you don't want a so-called authoritarian crackdown, Portland? How about you bring basic civil order? We're not asking you to turn into Republican town. We're simply just asking, hey, can you do something about the armed violent uprising happening in your streets every single day? Of course, the answer is no. As a matter of fact, what is Portland now allowing to happen through the guise, by the way, of left-wing NGOs? This is something we talk about extensively when it comes to the RICO case against Antifa, or yes, the very organized nature of what's happening. And you can trace a lot of that same dark money back to the Democrat Party, because many of the NGOs and nonprofits and the billionaire donors, obviously like George Soros, who are funding the Antifa violence, are also the people funding the Democrat Party. And then, by the way, you wonder why you'll never get an actual Democrat condemnation of Antifa. They say it's just an idea, it doesn't exist, and it's perfectly fine. They're all peaceful. This is the reason why. Because they're acting one and the same. As I so often say, you can pretend there's some type of gap between the violent communists in the streets and the supposed moderate neoliberal politicians who are in office, but stuff like this right here will show you that is not the case. According to Katie Davis Court, Exclusive news here, a leftist anti-ICE group called the Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition will be moving into a vacant office space at the bottom floor of Gray's Landing, which is the apartment building directly across from the ICE facility. In other words, what are they using that as? A staging ground for the violence. Now, thus far, they basically set up a homeless encampment outside in Portland that they've been using. The city basically breaks it up once a week to make it look like they're doing something, but in reality, they just let it come back time and time again. But now, apparently, guys, the Antifa have a permanent office space, which is a crazy thing, because I didn't know that an idea can rent an office space. I'm not sure what's the credit score of an idea. What is the proof of funds there? But anyways, the NGO is holding trainings on how to interfere with ICE operations and offers tips to illegal migrants on how to evade ICE capture. Its members have been involved, indeed, with the ongoing 24-hour Antifa occupation outside of the ICE facility, which has resulted in that pending deployment of the National Guard. You can see right here from the letter to the residents of this place, by the way. I mean, just imagine that, right? So you just innocently lease an apartment that you want to live in and, have a normal life. And then the community development company who owns the building is like, hey, we're going to rent out your lobby to a bunch of terrorists. It's kind of, I don't know if that was in the original agreement of the lease, but anyways, we wanted to also make you aware that starting this Monday, an organization called the Portland Rights Coalition will be operating out of a previously vacant commercial space in the Gray's Landing building. Yeah, I'm sure if you're coming home from work, it's going to be just so easy to be dealing with these people in your lobby. PIRC volunteers work to ensure that individuals with appointments at the ICE field office are informed of their rights and responsibilities. Oh, I'm sure that's all they're doing, by the way. They're just fighting for the due process of illegal aliens, which is why they're now renting out an office space right directly across from the street where there's constant riots going on. Sure. Including access to an attorney as part of due process. Yeah, that's all they're doing again. Right, so that's very interesting, huh? I thought there was no organized nature to any of this. The last thing I want to point out, I find to be further interesting, is the fact that Antifa, again, has been operating out of this, homeless encampment basically every single week. Today, the city is claiming they're going to clean it up. I guarantee you it's going to be right back there very soon. But this could actually be for a specific reason, and that is how the city of Portland actually treats homeless people. Take a listen to this recent interview of a homeless Portland resident, I guess you could say resident, because it tells you a lot, again, about the way policing is working in that city and maybe why you're seeing so much chaos in the streets. Because to make a long story short, the Portland police basically does not arrest homeless people. They're treated as a protected class, which maybe that's another way to protect Antifa, because they know that the members of Antifa are, but anyways, take a listen. This is actually really interesting.
Well, and in some ways, you're considered almost a protected class where if you break the law, you're not really going to get in trouble.
Yeah, there's a lot of, that's true. There's a lot of times where they just let her go. When I was on probation as a civilian, I had a very strict regimen to follow. When I got on probation and I was homeless, she literally wrote me a do not detain. Oh no, it was a cite and release. She gave me a cite and release warrant. So anytime I got caught up doing anything with the cops and they ran my name, it says cite and release. They never took me to jail. They just gave me a citation and went on my way. And we, a lot of us just don't ever go to court. The freedom keeps me out here a lot. And that's what brought me kind of to this area too, is just giving up and wanting to just do whatever I wanted. And it's, we don't follow, we don't have to follow any rules. I always say people who are on the streets I refer to people who are not homeless as civilians, because they work a 9 to 5 and, they hide if they're doing drugs, so they can drink on the weekends. And we're just stay on the sidewalk and get high, there's enough of us that it's what are they going to do about it, And it's the freedom of it keeps me out here, but there's a lot of negatives too, But yeah, that's the big thing for me is just, I don't know how I can go back to working a 9 to 5 and paying a job and, the clean too, staying sober is people who aren't homeless come out here and hang out with us and to reap the benefits of being homeless, which sounds funny to say, but we can get cheaper drugs and bigger hookups,
Yeah, well, isn't that really interesting? I would almost argue this is another policy incentivized to protect Antifa in that city, because again, there's a little bit of an overlap there. But yes, if you set up a supposed criminal justice policy that treats the homeless as a protected class and just basically refuses to ever arrest them or do anything about them, and, you know, again, what are Antifa members, if not unemployed, many homeless, many on drugs, then there you go, right? We might have actually just uncovered something very bombshell about what's going on at that Portland facility. You know, I wonder actually if you overturn this policy and you started arresting the homeless for, you know, committing crimes and doing drugs and causing all these problems out in public, how much Antifa would just dissipate? I don't know. Good question. But anyways, there you have it, guys. Brief update on Portland. Just total insanity. Okay. Need to do something. Need to federalize that city. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.